We'd like to thank our friends at Kiss the Flower Honey in Sonoma County, California for sponsoring this story. Kiss the Flower Honey supports bees by bringing pure, raw and natural hive products to the people. That means they take care of our little bee friends and make sure that we get honey and other amazing bee products straight from nature. And here's the best part, Magical Storybook listeners like you can get an exclusive 10% discount on their products at their website www.kisstheflower.com. You can find a link to their website in the story details. The Beekeeper and the Bewitched Hare. Once upon a time in a faraway cottage there lived a young beekeeper. Although he lived alone, he was not lonely, as his bees kept him busy, and they were good company. In the summer, when there were lots of flowers on the ground, the bees would buzz around happily, collecting pollen and making honey. But in the autumn, when the flowers became harder to find, the bees would slow down, and the beekeeper would take the time to thank them for the delicious batches of honey they had produced for him. This always seemed to cheer them up, and so he was sure that the bees understood him perfectly. One summer evening, while he was inspecting his beehives, the boy noticed the sound of barking in the distance. The next thing he saw was a long-eared hare bounding out of the woods towards him. It was being chased by two vicious-looking dogs. The boy quickly scooped up the terrified animal and hid it under his jacket, fighting the dogs off with a stick until they finally ran off. When it was all clear, the boy put the hare down on the ground and stroked it. He noticed that it was pure white, with the most beautiful blue eyes. "Goodness," he said, "I've never seen a hare as beautiful as you before." To the boy's surprise, the hare stayed by his side for the rest of the day, and when he went back to his cottage at the end of the day, the white hare followed him. He found it a carrot to eat, and for the rest of the night it sat quite happily on his lap. "You seem to want to be my pet," said the beekeeper, smiling, while gently stroking its long ears. The next morning, the boy introduced the hare to his bees. "This is my new pet," he said, holding it up. The bees casually inspected the hare, and as it didn't seem to be of any kind of threat to them, they went about their business making honey. The hare lived with the beekeeper for weeks, and gradually their friendship became as special to him as his bond with the bees was. He would often sit in the sun, watching the hare playing in the fields and thinking that he would never wish to trade this simple, quiet life for anything in the world. A few weeks later, the beekeeper was outside tending to his hives when he noticed an old woman walking along the road. Hoping to sell her some honeycomb, he went to the gate and greeted her, but instead of being interested in honey, the woman spent some time staring at the hare, which was now sitting by his feet. "My," she said, taking out her purse, "you don't see many white hares with blue eyes around here. How much do you want for it?" "Oh, the hare's not for sale," he replied. "It's my friend and companion." "Come now," she insisted. "Everything has a price. Look, I'll give you a gold coin for it." "My hare is not for sale," said the beekeeper firmly, getting a little annoyed with the old woman. Without warning, the old woman jumped over the gate and tried to grab the hare. The boy tried desperately to save it, but luckily a bee on a nearby flower had seen what was going on and had alerted the hive. A moment later, a huge swarm of bees had surrounded the woman. "Ah!" she cried, spinning around, trying to get the bees off her. "You'll be sorry you didn't hand over that worthless creature when you had the chance," she cried as she ran through the forest with a trail of bees swarming after her. The next day, the beekeeper was selling his honey at the village market, and he happened to mention to the baker on the next stall what had happened the previous day. "Surely that old woman was a witch," warned the baker, carefully arranging his bread and meat pies into neat rows. "You take my word for it. If you've upset her, you better be careful." That night, the beekeeper thought about what the baker had said, and he nervously checked the cottage windows and doors to make sure they were tightly locked. Summer passed and so did the autumn, but the witch did not return. October came, followed by the cold weather, and one chilly morning, while the beekeeper was outside, he saw a wagon roll by the front gate, carrying a family of travellers. The driver waved, and the beekeeper waved back, and soon it was out of sight. A few hours later, while he was securing his gate for the evening, the beekeeper noticed a sack of grain lying in the road. "Oh no, it must have dropped from the wagon," he thought. "They won't know it's missing till they stop for the night, and by then it will be too dark for them to look for it. The poor horse, it'll go hungry." So he lifted the sack onto his cart, picked up the hare and put it in his jacket, and followed the wagon's tracks until he caught up with the travellers. The driver was most surprised to see the boy, but was very grateful that he had taken the trouble to return the grain to them. Just then, the hare poked its head out from the beekeeper's jacket. "What's that?" he said. "A white hare with blue eyes?" "Yes," said the boy. "It's my pet." The traveller looked at the hare suspiciously. "That's more than a pet, I'd say," he replied. Then he shouted off into the distance. "Grandma, come out! I want to show you something." An elderly woman stepped out of the wagon and walked towards them. "Now, what do you think of that, Grandma?" said the traveller, nodding towards the hare. The woman approached the animal and examined it closely. "Oh my," she said. Her eyes widened in astonishment. "What?" said the beekeeper. "It's just a wild hare." The woman shook her head. "I wouldn't say that. That's a girl who's been cursed by a spell." The beekeeper had never heard of such a thing. "What do you mean?" he said. The traveller woman went on to tell him about a witch she had met along the road last spring. She said she has the power to bewitch humans and turn them into animals, she explained. And she had 2 dogs with her and a hare, pure white with bright blue eyes. Just like this one. The beekeeper looked into the eyes of his pet and believed what the woman was saying. "The witch already tried to grab her," said the beekeeper, "but my bees chased her away." The woman listened quietly while the boy told her the whole story, and then said, "She will come back, you can count on that. She's just waiting." "Waiting for what?" panicked the beekeeper. "All Hallows Eve, I suspect," she replied. "She knows that by then it'll be too cold for the bees to leave their hives and that they won't bother her again. But more importantly, All Hallows Eve is when a witch's magic is strongest." "What can I do?" he begged. The woman thought for a moment and then said, You must go and see your bees. Explain that the witch will return before the sun sets on All Hallows Eve and that they must leave their hives to help you when she does." "I will," said the beekeeper. "But that's not all," she continued. "Before the sun starts to set, you must place a gentle but strong harness on the hare and keep her on your lap until midnight has passed. Keep a tight grip on the harness, for when she returns, the witch will put a spell on the hare so powerful that she'll pull and kick to escape from you. Her sudden strength will shock you, but don't let go of the harness. If the bees will help you, then all the better." The beekeeper nodded and thanked the old woman for her help, then headed back to his cottage. Without delay, he visited each of the hives, telling them what the old woman had said. To his surprise, the bees seemed to be listening and murmuring as if to say, "We understand." As All Hallows' Eve approached, the beekeeper grew increasingly anxious, knowing that he would have to face the witch again. And when the day finally arrived, he did what the traveller woman had told him. He put a harness around the hare and placed her gently on his lap, and there they sat for hours until it grew dark. Suddenly, the beekeeper felt the hare jump. Realising that the witch was back, he grabbed the harness tightly. The hare twisted and kicked and pulled to escape from his lap. The boy could barely keep hold of her. He was beginning to lose his grip when, to his relief, he heard the loud buzz of the bees approaching. They flew through the cottage window and formed a protective circle around the hare. Immediately, she became calm and still. When the witch had vanished, the bees parted and revealed a blue-eyed girl standing on the floor where the hare had been. The girl told the beekeeper of how she had been kidnapped and placed under a spell by the evil witch. "But now I believe it to be a blessing," she added. "What do you mean?" asked the boy. "Well, if someone is able to show so much love and tenderness to their bees, and just as much kindness and love to a simple white hare, then I am truly blessed to have found them." The beekeeper and the girl eventually married, and together they lived out their days caring for the bees that had saved her from the witch's curse.